first down. They hand off to Marlon Mack. Huge hole, 50-yard line. He's at the 40, still going near sideline. He's at the 10. He's at the 5, and he will score. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, INDY. And again, it's picked up. It's Darius Leonard. Leonard with his second INT, and he's streaking down the near sideline. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 20. He's going to go. A pick six for the Maniac.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. We are going to be bringing you guys today a preview video of the Colts' upcoming matchup at Lucas Oil Stadium against the Green Bay Packers. And today with me, we have a very special guest. A lot of you have been begging Cody and I to get this man on the show for months now when you realized we were going to be playing the Packers. So we finally were able to get him on. Tom Grossi. Tom, how are you doing today?
I am so good. And for all the people who told you to get me on, I'm so sorry for the disappointment that you're about to face. It's like, wow, we've hyped it up of like, man, the fandom's so excited, and this is what you get. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, exactly. All right, man. So first question here, we're just going to keep it straight up and to the point. And it's something that, you know, it's been kind of going around the NFL recently of who's been the best wide receiver in the game. And one of those names that's been brought up a lot this year has been Davante Adams. Now, is that the case of Aaron Rodgers feeling more comfortable in the offense? Is that by design? I'm not so sure, but I mean, he does have over 10 touchdowns on the year, so the guy is balling. Do you believe Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the league at this moment in time?
Yeah, because and I'm glad you made that like caveat, because I feel like, you know, if you're just like, who's the best wide receiver? Like, that's like, you look at guys like Julio Jones, right? You look at the Mike Evans of the leagues, the DeAndre Hopkins, what have you. I think what can't be argued is that Davante Adams is definitely the best route runner in the NFL by far. The guy's release, and I think he's been on that level for a few years now. You mentioned about Aaron Rodgers and like, you know, is it just him feeling more comfortable? If I'm not mistaken, Davante has had nearly 1,000 yards in almost every season. I know his sophomore year, that's when he struggled and the Packers were thinking about cutting him. But like after that, I think he's had 2 seasons with like 996 yards. He's 4 away. And then the rest have been all over 1,000. He's been a stud when he's been on the field. I think that there's a very strong argument. You got look at guys like, you know, like maybe a DK Metcalf who's been playing really well. I know Michael Thomas has been injured. Julio Jones is still playing really, really well this season. DeAndre Hopkins, obviously the big Hail Mary. I think that if he's not your number one, he's most definitely top 3 in the league right now. But I think just with the combination of his route running, his hands, except for this past Sunday, just don't look at that part, except one great touchdown catch. I think he definitely makes that argument because he doesn't have like that crazy speed. But he makes up for it by just being so elusive, being so quick off the ball. His release is disgustingly good, and he's just so reliable. So I think that he's definitely in that top 1, bare minimum top 3 conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say outside of maybe Stephon Diggs for me, I'd say Davante Adams is probably the best route runner. I mean, it does happen to be that way for a lot of these guys. Some of the guys who are not as fast, but just the way you create space, not always about speed, but that footwork is absolutely remarkable. So let's continue with the offense here. We talked about Davante Adams. We know the big trio of this Packers team, you know, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and then you got Davante Adams. But let's talk about some of the weaknesses here. I know this season, there's not been a lot of them, at least not a lot of glaring ones to people that really don't follow the team very much. But to you so far this season, what's been the biggest weakness for the Packers offense?
Yeah, I think, you know, what people, and especially like the media, will be the first thing to point out is like, wide receiver. Because once you start looking, you know, past Davante Adams and you're like, who else do you have? And I think it's important to realize that, you know, the Packers in the games that they have won, you know, besides like this Sunday, they've been having no problems putting up points. And I think that a lot of that is because their offensive line play has been amazing. Even when you have guys like David Bakhtiari missing time, they're playing really, really well. But MVS has kind of like definitely this past Sunday, but has had some like really, really nice flashes And we've seen this before as Packers fans, but it seems like he's doing it a little bit more of a consistent rate. You have Alan Lazard, who's been injured, since week 2. So he'll be coming back hopefully this Sunday. He just got activated off IR. If I had to point anything when it comes to weaknesses, it's not necessarily personnel. I think it's been some of the play calling. At times when it's like 3rd and short has been problematic. Sometimes when we get down to the red zone. But the biggest thing is coming back from a deficit. That has been a problem last year, and that's been a problem this year under Matt LaFleur. You saw it definitely with the Buccaneers game. That was like very, very glaring. Once this team is down, it's very difficult for them to come back. And I think that's been like an overall weakness. And I don't know if you want to point to that just becoming one-sided. They're just having to rely on Aaron Rodgers and throw the ball. You take Aaron Jones out of the mix when you're just going with the passing game. But that would, I'd say, be like their biggest weakness as of right this second on offense. Because like you said, there aren't a ton. But that one, if the Colts, for example, build a sizable lead on Sunday, that's when I start to worry and go, I don't know if this is going to work out. Gotcha.
So let's talk about another wide receiver that you guys have, and that is Alan Lazard. So he just got activated. I believe it was today. I saw Schefter report that. How big is that for you guys this Sunday? Because I know he was killing it at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Lazard was this guy who came in and really kind of started coming into his own at the end of last year, especially in that Lions game. And he kind of filled in that vacuum that hole where there was no number 2 wide receiver. And we were hoping it was going to be MVS. We were hoping for a lot of things, but it never turned out to be. Now, fast forward, in which there was a lot of hype for Alan Lazard. And the biggest question was, like, can he be that number 2 guy that we've desperately needed? And, I think having Lazard on the field is a game changer. I think MVS plays better when he's on the field because he's our only speedy threat. And so I think that, having some more eyes on Alan Lazard, a reliable, consistent playmaker, I think is definitely a game changer because Devontae Adams is going to get the double coverage, or if you're playing the Vikings, triple coverage, and he's still going to find a way to get the ball, but it's going to give opportunities to these other guys. And Alan Lazard is definitely a guy who can take advantage of that. So it's going to be great having him back there and having our offense back at full strength.
All right. Staying with the offense here. So this season, at least from my perspective, I've seen you guys from your offensive standpoint. It seems your team has a completely different atmosphere this year. Last year it was the defense, right? You were a top 3 defense. Every position was stacked. And then, we'll say beg to differ on that. But then, the offense last season, it was okay. But, they were like, again, outside of Devontae Adams, who do you have? There really wasn't much to go off of. And this year, it just seems, again, the offense just seems to be a little more in sync. Defense has been, I don't know how you feel about the defense. It's been, for me, it's been about average. But
yes.
What's been the biggest difference for this offense in general? And how much do you think Matt LaFleur has had to do with the change in how the offense seems to be more consistent?
Yeah, I think last year, you mentioned Devontae Adams. There was Devontae Adams, and then the other big one was Aaron Jones, because Aaron Jones was tearing through that league, having double-digit touchdowns. He was incredible. And what you saw a lot of last year was LaFleur is coming in, introducing brand new schemes, brand new looks. You have Hackett coming in from Jacksonville, again, introducing brand new looks and schemes. The only guy who was kind of consistent, who was there from the McCarthy era, was over on the defensive side of the ball, and that was Mike Pettin. And I think that's why you saw that defense, have those glimmers of like, oh, they can be really good. We were really effective of getting after the quarterback. Run defense still wasn't that great, but the secondary was good. Passing defense was pretty solid. So this year, I think you're seeing, some more comfort within Matt LaFleur's offense. It's his second year of kind of just putting his own flair on it, in which they're not having to rely on Mike McCarthy, or that's not what they're going to have to fall back on. I think you definitely have a lot of Matt LaFleur influence on that. I think you're having a lot more motion that is starting to happen pre-snap and to confuse defenses. And I think that one of the biggest things about the Packers this year is that everyone was talking about how they don't have a second wide receiver, but you were looking at all the tight ends that are getting targets. Big Bob Tunyon in the beginning, was getting a ton of targets. He was leading the league in tight end touchdowns at one point. I know he hasn't really gotten a lot of productivity since that point, but Aaron Jones is great in the passing game as well. Same with Jamal Williams. And I think it's just because like they're being utilized in such different ways that teams really don't know how to plan for it. Because last year there was like, again, there was that mix of McCarthy and LaFleur really hadn't made it his own. But now this is something, it's again, obviously a Shanahan type offense, but it's something that the league hasn't, or let me put it this way, it's something that opponents haven't seen the Packers run because there's not a ton of tape before this season on it. So I think it's like a little bit of the nuance to it, and plus it's just a little bit more comfort with the actual scheme itself.
Gotcha. So now, talked a lot about the offense here. Take all that into consideration here for this next part. You're coming into Lucas Oil here, and you're facing the number 1 defense in the NFL, the number 2 rush defense. They've shut guys down like Dalvin Cook, and who's been on a tear. I know you know from a couple weeks ago with that, what was it, 4 touchdowns that he had? 4. So, yeah, Dalvin only had 1 late garbage time touchdown against Indy. And there's been a couple other guys. Derrick Henry had himself a 100-yard game, but never scored in that game. So, the Colts defense has really stuffed teams up front with that power front line. And especially in the passing game, too, it's been different for the Colts. DeForest Buckner and guys on the edge, they don't really blow away teams when it comes to sacks. They're about average. But when it comes to QB hits and pressure, we're right up there amongst the top, always getting pressure. And this team is just so fast and young in the back 4 as well. So how confident are you in first being able to run the ball? Because like I said, this Colts defense is different when it comes to getting pressure, and then being able to pass. Obviously Devontae Adams is going to get his, but how confident are you in being able to match up against this defense?
Well, first, I want to say that I absolutely love that you were able to take a player like Xavier Rhodes, who was trash on the Vikings, and actually make him a competent player here, because it just rubs more salt in the wound of the Vikings. So yes. I'm all about that all day, every day.
Yes.
And Xavier Rhodes has a lot of experience with Aaron Rodgers. We Packers fans used to say the roads are open, because basically we're able to just toss all over him, and it was fantastic.
This year.
I mentioned the offensive line before. I think the offensive line is definitely going to have its work cut out for it. David Bakhtiari returning, also getting an extension to make him the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. He's got a lot to play for, so that's great. I think we're definitely going to have to protect Aaron Rodgers. That's going to be like first and foremost. If you watch Sunday's game against the Jaguars, we kind of got away from the run pretty early. Aaron Jones, I think he got a total of like 18 touches, some through the air. I think he had like maybe 13 on the ground. Had a little over 50 yards. And I think, with a team like the Colts, who are pretty damn good, whether it's their secondary or whether it's their defensive line, it's kind of like pick your poison and which way do you want to potentially do it? I think they have to try to run the ball. I don't know how much success they're going to have with that, but I get concerned when this team becomes one-dimensional. Now, I will say that the Packers can win it in a variety of different ways. They definitely have the ability to do so, but I think that this is going to be a really, really contested game. And if there's anything I'm concerned about, it's actually not necessarily your defense. I'm worried about our defense versus your offense, specifically your running game. If it's anything like it was against the Titans, I get a little bit concerned. But listen, the Packers offense is going to have its work cut out for them. Like it's going to be a grind and a battle this coming Sunday.
Yeah, and great segue going into that defense with the Colts rushing attack. Let's talk about your defense real quick, because like you said, the rushing attack for Indianapolis against the Titans last Thursday was much, much better than it has been all season. Trust me, the Colts have not been the same since week 1 when they lost Marlon Mack. When Marlon Mack went down, the whole game of running for the Colts just seemed to completely disappear. The offensive line hasn't been the same, run blocking. Jonathan Taylor still needs time to develop because he's still struggling with his vision. Jordan Wilkins is a grinder, but he's not going to make a ton of those big plays for you. We've had to resort to Nyheim Hines, who Cody and I have said, has really needed to be more involved in this offense. And now all of a sudden the Colts are starting to figure out, oh yeah, we can win games with this offense if we just give this guy the dang ball. But, it took them a while to figure it out, but they finally did. But, what's the biggest weakness for your defense right now? Is it the secondary? Is it the linebacker crew? What is it?
Yeah, a lot of people point to their linebacker crew, especially inside linebacker. We did get Christian Kirksey back. You know, Kamal Martin has been pretty good. I think the biggest issue for me is on that defensive line, we have Kenny Clark, and who we just re-signed earlier this offseason, and that's about it. You know, Dean Lowry, we extended him a couple years ago, hasn't really panned out. Montravius Adams, former third-round pick, hasn't really panned out a whole lot. Has some flashes every now and then, but really not that impressive. Kingsley Keke, fifth-round pick, he's okay. Again, he's shown some flashes too, especially when Kenny Clark was out. But that's kind of what it is. It's okay around a very good nose tackle being Kenny Clark. Now, I will say, you know, and take this with a grain of salt because it's the Jaguars, but at the very end of the Jaguars game, you know, the defense kind of came alive a little bit, and they did make some great stops on some short fields. But Rashawn Gary, former 12th overall pick from last year, he had a really nice game last Sunday. You know, have Zadarius and Preston Smith, who have not been as efficient as they were last year. I mean, they were the most effective pass rushing duo in the league last year in terms of like pressures and QB hits and all that stuff. And I'm hoping that they're starting to dial it up. Both of them had a sack this past Sunday. But I think the run defense is what scares me the absolute most, is that Mike Pettin is infamous. If you watch the Dalvin Cook game, if you watch the NFC Championship game from last year, if, you know, even Robinson was able to get over 100 yards on us, that's my major concern, because Pettin has a very, very tough time actually adjusting his game plan when it comes to trying to stop the run. And I don't think he's ever going to sell out on it and like just try to stop the run, because then that's going to lead to problems with Phillip Rivers. So my biggest concern is, and always is going to be as a Green Bay Packers fan, that run defense. And until they can really kind of dominate that line and either get some support with Kenny Clark or, you know, not let teams run all over them, it's just going to continue to happen week in and week out.
Yeah, and I love that you said take it with a grain of salt because it's the Jaguars. Yeah. Well, I can't say that as a Colts fan because in week 1 we lost to them. So I can't necessarily say with a grain of salt because, I mean, at least the good thing is we get to play them the last game of the season. I'm sure we'll win that one, but that one still has me salty from that one for sure. Gardner Minshew throwing 95% completion percentage that day. That was terrible. I mean, you looked at that defense on week 1. That is nothing compared to what this defense is now. It's really weird how they did a turnaround that much, that quickly. But, and it's funny that you mentioned the Packers run defense being the biggest fear here. That kind of gives me a little bit more confidence for this Colts team, because we said, okay, well, the running attack for the Colts had picked up against the Titans. Maybe that'll start to finally pick it up a little bit as it goes along, but we'll have to see. But outside of the rushing attack, is there any player specifically, or is there anyone else on this Colts offense that potentially scares you? Because, I mean, that offensive line, while it hasn't been great at run blocking, is still one of the best offensive lines in pass blocking. Phillip Rivers has the least amount of sacks taken this year, is being hit, tied second for least amount of hits. And we know that Phillip Rivers, if he gets a clean pocket, he can still make some things happen. And this Colts offense is finally getting a little healthier. Is there anyone that sticks out to you that you're afraid to potentially see?
I mean, besides the rush, I mean, I do have to mention, you know, it was on Thursday night with Jonathan Taylor, that one hit that he put on the Titans and like spun off it. I watched that and I was like, oh crap. I imagine they were like, okay, I know we're playing the Titans, but like, let's imagine this is against the Packers, because we're probably gonna be able to do the same exact thing when it comes to the running game. You know, there's a guy that a lot of Packers fans really wanted to draft, and that's Michael Pittman, that they were looking at. And I saw him come alive a little bit against the Titans as well. He's a potential problem, but you know, when it comes to receivers, the only reason I have some concern is our top 2 corners did not play on Sunday, and that's Jair Alexander, who's making the argument to be the best corner this year. He's been phenomenal. And Kevin King, who has been out for several weeks with a litany of injuries that just don't seem to heal. So if we have Jair Alexander, and even better, if we have Kevin King, I will feel a lot more comfortable about how we are going to play against those receivers. But if we don't, it could be a problem. That's when Phillip Rivers could potentially do some damage.
Yeah, I mean, Jair Alexander, man, that would be rough to not have him, because like you said, he's been killing it this year. I mean, When did he get hurt? Was it just this last Sunday, or was it a lingering injury?
It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was a 49ers game, and he got a concussion. So he was in concussion protocol. So he was out on Sunday. I think there was a chance that he might have played. So I'm assuming, like over 2 weeks out at this point, like he should be okay. I mean, that's the hope.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of thought that same thing too last year when Darius Leonard went out with a concussion. He actually missed 3 games. I mean, it's weird. Concussions are a little bit like what the virus that we're dealing with right now. It hits people differently. It just depends on what happens. Last thing here before we get into our score predictions, it's just something that Cody and I have talked about a lot recently, but I mean, how's the special teams in Green Bay? Because Colts know that, and Titans know especially too, special teams can help lose you a game. I mean, last week, they had a punt that went 17 yards, and the Colts were able to get a really short field and score a touchdown. Then the next drive, they go 3 and out and get a blocked punt, which is returned for a touchdown. And then the next drive, they miss a field goal. So 17 unanswered points there, messed up by special teams.
Yeah.
How's Green Bay's? I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I mean, so our returner, if he plays, is Tyler Ervin, who, he's not going to like shock the world. But last year, before Tyler Ervin came in, we were in the negative when it came to punt return yards, and that was like a good amount into the season. So like, we're not going to wow anybody in that. But J.K. Scott is pretty solid when it comes to special teams. We did let up a touchdown against the Jaguars. We allowed a punt return just because our punter didn't even pretend to go make a tackle. Like he went like, and then got really scared and kind of backed off, but he's like 5 years old, so it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, the special teams is besides the blatant error from last week, they've been solid, but like, it's nothing that's gonna wow anybody.
Gotcha. All right, man. Well, we're at the end of this podcast here now. Everything's been said. What's the score prediction from you for this upcoming Sunday?
I'm imagining it's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. I think it's going to be kind of like a domination of time of possession, and we're going to kind of see like it might just be whoever has the ball last. I'll give the edge to the Packers because, of course, I'll give the edge to them. I'll say it'll be like 24-14 or something like that. Maybe even 24-20. I think it could be a super duper close game.
Okay. All right. I'm actually going to go the opposite way here. I'm actually going to say that it's going to be a much higher scoring game. Now, I don't like to say that because, the Colts defense has been so good this year of keeping teams low on points. But this week, man, that bad man, Aaron Rodgers, he scares me every time that he comes on the field. But I am also going to give I'm not going to give the slight edge to the Packers this time, though. I'm actually going to give it to the Colts. It'll be 34-31. Again, like you said, a very close game, but I think it's going to be back and forth for a lot of this. And like you said, it is going to come down to the time of possession. Who's better in the fourth quarter at controlling the ball? I think that's going to decide who wins this one.
Yeah, it's funny. I can only see this going 2 ways. Either it's a super duper close game or the Packers get blown out because you guys literally just run it down their throats. I mean, I got to be honest. Like, that's what I'm looking at is like, I am afraid of Hines and Taylor. Like that, I'm looking at that. I'm like, that could be a really big problem. I'm hoping it's not. And I hope the Packers are able to get one out because, like, again, if they show up as lethargic as they did against the Jaguars, it could be a problem.
Yeah, and that's funny because I'm the exact opposite. I think it's either going to be a close game or the Packers are going to blow us out. I just feel like that's going to happen.
That's it. Like, we're just sitting here going, okay.
Either it's going to be the blowout of the other team, the team that we don't want to blow out, or we think it's going to be close. But.
Exactly.
All right. So thank you so much, Tom, again, for coming on, man. Really appreciate you doing this.
Of course.
And, of course, what my co-host Cody would say to all of our guests that come on here for our previews, good luck, but not too much luck.
Yeah, exactly. I used to say good luck, but just not this Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed. And as always, go Colts.